Okay, so RightTool is both a Google Chrome extension that you can add to your Google Chrome browser or to your Microsoft Edge browser. Technically, it works in other browsers that are Chromium based as well, but they're not as well known as Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. So these are the two types of browsers that we recommend. When you go into QuickBooks and you don't have RightTool, it's pretty evident. You don't see anything on the right-hand side of the screen. So in order to install RightTool on your browser, just go to righttool.app, RightTool, 2Ts.app, and then you're going to click on the link where it says RightTool for free. And then once you click on that link, you're going to go into the landing page of the Google Chrome store. Now, this will work either in Google Chrome or in Microsoft Edge. So if you're in Microsoft Edge, you still are using the Google Chrome store. And then on the right of the screen, at some point, there should be a big button that says Add to Chrome. If it doesn't say Add to Chrome, that means you don't have a Chromium-based browser, or it means maybe you already installed it or something like that. So once we click on Add to Chrome, you're actually going to see a pop-up window that says, hey, are you sure you want to add this extension? And then it tells you which websites it has access to, which is basically any Intuit.com or QuickBooks online websites. And then we're going to click on Add Extension. Once you click on Add Extension, you're going to get a pop-up for the RightTool Terms and Conditions and Privacy Policy. It's sort of requirement, for us to at least to have that pop-up. You can X out of that pop-up, and you can close the Google Chrome extension store at this point because you no longer need to do anything else with that. When you open up QuickBooks Online, we opened it originally without RightTool being installed, so I would have to refresh. So when I click on my refresh button, after it's done refreshing QuickBooks Online, you're going to suddenly see a navigation bar on the right-hand side show up. Now, when you install RightTool for the very first time, it's going to be the RightTool free edition. By default, we close or auto close the left navigation bar that can be turned off or on demand. So it's up to you if you want to close the left navigation bar or not. The purpose of RightTool primarily is to get you looking right instead of looking left and having all of the tools that you need, or most of the tools that you need to do things in QuickBooks Online on a single navigation bar. In the last couple of years, that left navigation bar has gotten so many changes and so much turbulence that people have gotten kind of fed up with it. So we built a total customizable navigation bar that you can build on your own. Now, the easiest way to know that you're on the free edition is because there will be ads on that bottom right. And the people that are, or the companies that advertise in RightTool are the ones that essentially support the free version of RightTool. It's also good to mention that the Pro version of RightTool, which is the one that you pay for, the premium one, that's going to give you more features. But most people are super happy and excited just with the free version, and we want to focus on the free version. But if we have time towards the end of the webinar, we'll talk about some of the additional potential features you can use with the paid edition of RightTool. Okay. Now, the first thing that you're going to see on the right-hand side is you're going to see a sort of icon bar. The plus, the plus button or the add new button, it mimics hold on, just X out of this for a second. It mimics what would be the equivalent of the clicking on the new button on the left-hand side. So if you go on the left navigation bar and click on new, you get this menu where you can see all the transactions. And if you collapse the left navigation bar, the new button gets added here to the top. And that's a basic QuickBooks Online function. But what we did is we added that button also in the right navigation bar. And the idea, again, is to get you just looking and working on a single place. Right next to it, we're going to see the gear menu or the QuickBooks settings menu, which simply just opens the settings button that you can open, which is only a couple of inches away, but we put them next to each other. Right afterwards, you're going to see the RightTool settings button. And that's kind of like where the magic happens. This is where we get to turn off and on all the features that we want to see or maybe don't want to see with RightTool. So it's going to be up to you which settings you want to have turned on. Okay. Now, once you're in the settings menu, you actually can see that I am on free. If you look in the top right of the screen, I am on free edition. I am on 1.18 free. Now, every time we add an update or we add some features, that number, the version number is going to go up. It's also valuable for us from a
Troubleshooting.
from a troubleshooting or support perspective. It's valuable to us to know which version you're in, because we're adding updates to this probably once a week at this point. Now, you can search for things in the search box. So if you're not sure what you're looking for, or maybe you've heard somebody talking about something that RightTool can do, you can search something that's part of the name of the setting or the description. So let's say I'm looking for something related to batching or something like that. So I type the word batch and then click on search, and then it will tell you all the settings that have the word batch either in the name of the settings or in the description of the setting itself. Now, the ones that are grayed out are the ones that are disabled because they're pro only. Batch is a great example. Most of the batching tools are going to be on the Pro edition. Most of the navigational tools are going to be on the free edition. Obviously, whatever's on free, it's on Pro as well. You can also go to the left-hand side and click on the different settings submenus where you can see all the things that can be turned off and on. So under accessibility, you notice that keyboard shortcuts are turned on by default. That means that automatically when you install RightTool, they're turned on. You can toggle that and turn it off. All the things that you see off right now, they can be turned on because they are available in the free edition. If you go down to the first half of the settings submenu, so accessibility, QBO user experience, tab management, error prevention, classic reports, and bank rules, before there's this line separation, those are all available in all editions, free and pro. And then after the line separation, you're going to notice that all these things have pro next to it. Basically means that's only available in the pro or the paid edition of RightTool. Again, we're going to be focusing on the free settings because we want to get everybody here on, get everybody hooked on the free edition, and then after you love RightTool and you trust the tool, you can obviously upgrade if you want to. RightTool in 2023 is $50 a month for the Pro edition, and in 2024 is going to go up to closer to $60 a month for the Pro edition. And we're also developing a firm edition for multi-user support. Currently, you can add Pro for a firm with multi-users, but we're deeply developing the multi-user usability for firms, for accounting firms. Most of the Pro users are accountants or accounting professionals. We do have a couple of non-accountants using the Pro edition and loving it. So we'll get back to that. So let's talk about exploring these settings for a second. So when you click on the information button or the little icon next to any of the toggles, you get a description to what the toggle is. And again, that description would be what the search can search for. And you're going to see a YouTube video. Sometimes they're 30 seconds, sometimes it's 2 or 3 minutes explaining how that feature works. You can play within it, or you can maximize the screen or go straight into YouTube if you can watch it in YouTube. Now, I'm going to X out of that and come back into QuickBooks Online, and we'll talk about keyboard shortcuts for a second because this is one of the most important aspects of RightTool. If you click on Control-Alt ? On a PC, or Control-Option ? On a PC, you get a little pop-up window that tells you what are all the keyboard shortcuts that QuickBooks Online gives you by default. So if you hit Control-Alt-I, you get to an invoice. Control-Alt-W, it gets to a check. But for example, there's nothing to open bills. So this is a great example of what we add with RightTool is we add basically the entire keyboard. As a matter of fact, every combination of keys that the system allows us to use, we have mapped it to something, okay? Because obviously, this is not enough keyboard shortcuts to give you full keyboard shortcut power. So when you see the little K icon on the top right of the screen, where on RightTool, and you click on that, it will take you to the landing page in RightTool where we actually give you the default keyboard shortcuts that QuickBooks Online gives you. And then if you scroll a little bit down, you get to see what the rest of the keyboard has been mapped to. For example, we have J for journal entry. We have N for sales receipt, and we have B for bill. So I'll show you really quick. Of course, you cannot see my keyboard, but I promise you my hands are on my keyboard and not in my mouse. And then I'm going to hit Control Alt B on the keyboard. Okay. And that is going to open bill. So let me just make sure that I'm doing this correctly. So Control Alt B on the keyboard will open a bill. If I X out of this and do Control Alt J on the keyboard, that's going to open up. It's hard to do this with one hand. It's going to open the journal entry. And the next one, I think it was the sales receipt. So Control Alt N on the keyboard is going to open the sales receipt. So just a simple example of additional functionality that we add. There's all sorts of things like the ability to open and close that left and right navigation bar. I'm literally doing this with my keyboard, not my mouse here, mouse on my head. Okay, doing it with my hands. Okay, so there's a lot of really cool things that we've added to the keyboard shortcuts. Definitely worth exploring. The other part that you see is the search. Now, this is a search that combines searching for shortcuts inside RightTool and also searching amount or text inside QuickBooks. We actually combine both functionalities into a single search box. You do have a search box in QuickBooks that kind of works similar, where it searches across multiple things, but these search boxes have been changing so many times in the last couple of months. Plus, some people feel they're clunky. So we gave you what we think it's a much better search experience, especially for the power user that most of the time is searching for a dollar amount. So let's start by searching, instead of dollar amount, to searching a shortcut. So for example, I'm looking for a report that has the word class in it. So I just type CLASS, and then it gives me a list of every single screen in QuickBooks that has class, or every report that has the word class. So for example, we have sales by class summary. All I have to do is click on that, and that's going to open my sales by class summary. If I go to sales by class detail, it will open that report. If I see purchases by class detail, it will open that report, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if I click on, for example, class list, that's not a report. That's actually, that is a report. But if I click on classes, it takes me to the class screen. So anything that has the word class in it. Now, if anything in this screen you access a lot, you can make this a shortcut. So for example, let's say profit and loss by class is something we access a lot. So I'm going to click on the little star next to that shortcut. And let's say sales by class summary as well. I click star next to that shortcut. Then I'm going to X out of the search and go back into my favorites. And you'll notice that we gave you 10 default favorites. So you see here from bank feed all the way down to reclass transaction. These first 10 are the ones that Mark and I, Mark is the co-developer of this tool, decided based on observation and much crowdsourcing are the things that most people access in QuickBooks Online, which is bank feed, bank register, balance sheet, profit and loss, journal entry, accountant home, reconcile, chart of accounts, item list, and reclassify transactions. We enter them in there, and they're also pre-numbered. Those numbers represent a shortcut. So if I want to go to a balance sheet, you see that the balance sheet has a 3 next to it. I do Control Alt 3, and that will take me to the balance sheet. If I go Control Alt 1, it will take me to the profit and loss. And these are a link to the classic version of the reports, not the enhanced version of the reports. Once QuickBooks Online, sorry, Control Alt 1 took me to bank feed. But Control Alt 4 takes me to profit and loss. And these are linked to the classic version, not the enhanced version. So while the classic versions of the reports still exist, we're going to add and keep shortcuts in RightTool so you can access them. Because, at the time I'm recording this video, the enhanced reports or the new reports are not very popular in QuickBooks Online. Okay. The other cool thing about this is you can customize them. Let's say, for example, profit and loss is the single most common thing that I access. I can click and drag profit and loss and put it on the very first slot. And let's say the balance sheet is number 2, click and drag and put in the second slot. And let's see bank register is in the 4th slot. And let's say reconcile is in the, third slot, and the reconcile is in the 4th, and bank feed is in the 5th. So by you changing the order, you also change the mapping of that keyboard shortcut. So if I want to go to a bank register now, I do Control Alt 3, that will take me to the bank register. Control Alt 4 will take me to reconcile, et cetera, et cetera. You can remove any of the shortcuts here if you don't find those useful. Let's say I never go to Accountant Home. Let's say this is a place I never go to. You can just click on the star. It removes it from your favorites, and then it moves everything up, shifts everything up, and whatever is between 1 and 10, and Control-Alt-0 being the representative of the 10 in this case, will be in there as a keyboard shortcut. Even if they're not in a shortcut, they're still available there, so you can access them. Now, if you don't want to search through the report or the screen, and you want to browse everything that QuickBooks Online has available, you can click on all shortcuts, and you can actually go through the menu hierarchy. For example, I go to bank transactions, and you get to see all the areas in QuickBooks Online. We took our time to figure out what the direct URL for every one of these screens are, and we loaded them into RightTool, so you can figure out, which of these things you want to have readily available. So let's say write check, I want to have it readily available, and pay bill, I want to have readily available. So I just add that star and I add it into my favorites. Let's say create expense. It's also I want to have it readily available, right? So again, you add the star, adds to the favorites. When I go back into favorites, they're added in there. And again, I can put write check all the way in the top. If write check is the most important thing that I do, it will be there as your number one favorite. So that's essentially the most basic elements of RightTool. The other cool thing that we added is, and I'm gonna X out of some of these here, so I'm just gonna keep 10, is a little open all button, and there's also a keyboard shortcut for that. I believe it's Control-Alt-Up arrow. And then once you click on open all or Control-Alt-Up arrow, every single link in that favorites is gonna open up as a new tab. So some people like using multiple tabs in QuickBooks Online and switching tabs back and forth. If you're that type of person, or you have a particular workflow, every time you log into QuickBooks Online, there's 7 screens, 10 screens that you always log into, that open all becomes really, really useful. Notice that all the tabs are in the top here, so I can quickly navigate and I don't have to use a single screen. Some users don't like using multiple screens. Some users like using single tab. So you did that part of the navigation is actually customizable depending on your style. And if you want to quickly know what tabs are available, you click on Manage Tabs. So instead of being on Favorites, you click on Manage Tabs, and then every single tab you have open shows up in RightTool. This is similar to QuickBooks Desktop's open window list. So if I click on any of them within the RightTool tab, I can switch with them back and forth. And what's also cool is I can close any of them from here. So I can close a balance sheet from here or close a journal entry from here, and click on refresh all if I want to refresh all the tabs and the screen. So basically it can run a refresh. If I have multiple reports open or something like that, I can refresh all the tabs. So when you go back to them, they're fully refreshed with whatever new information. And I can also, if I go back to manage tabs, I can also close all, and essentially it keeps the one that I'm working on and it closes all the other tabs for you. So multi-tab management, it's a really important part of RightTool, which is going to lead us to talk about the main preference, which is deciding whether the tools in RightTool keep you on the same tab or open a new tab. So for now, if I go to favorites and I go to write check, that essentially stays within the same tab. If I go to profit and loss, stays within the same tab. If I go to journal entry, stays within the same tab. Again, this is how QuickBooks Online is designed to work anyway. But if I click on the settings button and I go to tab management, there is a setting here called RT shortcut opens a new tab. So if you like that style of just having new tabs all the time, then you turn that on. And then when I go back into RightTool, then anything else I click from now on in here, it opens in a new tab. So for example, if I go to balance sheet, notice here in the top, it opened a new tab. If I go to reconcile, notice in the top, it opened a new tab. The other thing that's important for you to find out, this is a very subtle but awesome feature. When I go back into settings and go into tab management, notice that default turn on is this thing that says match tab names. Now I'm going to turn that off because you kind of have to see it to like appreciate what this does. So we're going to turn that off and then go back into QuickBooks Online. I'm going to close all the tabs here and I'm going to go into the home page. So generally, and I'm gonna collapse the right navigation bar and just kind of show you this. Generally, when we're in the home screen and we go to any particular screen, let's say I go to receipts, it changes, to the new screen, but the tab still says QuickBooks or something random that has nothing to do with the screen you're in, and it has to do with how like websites read the page that you're working on. So sometimes you'll get a good reading, like in this one, for example, sales transactions, you get a good reading. But then I switch to customers, okay, they got a good reading there. So it's in QuickBooks, it's sort of uh, um, kind of hit and miss. Like for example, I went to books review and this stayed in contractors. I went to overview and now it says QuickBooks Online. If I go to tasks, okay, it still says QuickBooks Online. So essentially what we fixed, and now you're going to notice it now, when I go to match tab names, what we fixed is, especially for people that are going to be using a lot of multiple tabs, you want to have a name on the top that makes sense. So we went in there and renamed almost all the tabs. Sometimes we'll miss one or two screens, and then once we get feedback, we'll fix it. But notice in the top that all the tabs actually have proper names. And we did something very specific with the bank register and with the reconcile screen. So sometimes people will have multiple registers open. So if you have multiple registers open, you can actually recognize what account you're in. So if I am on Chase 9989, it will rename the tab in the top and tell you which account you're in. If I am in checking 4660, it renames it on the top. Same thing with the reconcile screen, whatever bank I'm reconciling at the moment, it will give me that title up there. So specifically for reconciliations and check registers, I'll know which account I'm in. For bank feeds, it'll just say bank feeds or banking. We have not figured out how to do that by account just because the nature of how this screen works, but we've gotten people saying, hey, I would love to see the account name and bank feeds if I have multiple of them, but we haven't figured that one out yet. But it is in the wish list. Let's call it that. Okay. So I have Mark here watching and listening. He's the actual programmer. He built this app with me. Mark, to give my voice a break, and from everything that we've shown so far, did I miss anything important?
The only thing I would say that's important is the add custom feature. So some people, if you have ever made a report before that you specifically like, because we can't put every single, configuration of every report inside of RightTool. So if you have a specific configuration, like let's say you want a specific time period and you want to change it to display by weeks and have previous period like that, as long as it's something that can apply to every single company, then all you have to do is make that change, make it so that the settings are like that. And then you click add custom. And all you have to do is change the name to whatever you want. So yeah. Profit and loss for last month by week, for instance, you could put that in, and that will work for every single client that you go into, which just makes it so you don't have to, constantly make custom reports for every single client.
Correct. So it won't work if you have multiple, in this case, let's say you're not an accountant and multiple clients means multiple company files that you're working on. If you want to customize and you customize something that's specific to an account or a customer or a product or a vendor or something like that, or a class, that's not going to work across multiple companies because every company has a different configuration. But if you just change the date range or one of these settings here, or whether it's cash or accrual or collapsed or whatever, those settings are part of the URL on reports. Now, important to mention that it only works on the classic reports. QuickBooks has been transforming to a new reports platform that it's quote better, and we as programmers we actually don't find it any better because the having a direct URL for all the settings, it was super flexible from a custom URLing perspective. So as long as we still have the classic reports, this will work on classic reports only. So it's important to mention that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back into the settings here and see if anything else here is worth mentioning. I am actually going to skip some of these other settings that are here, with the exception of one. And this one called Audit Log New Tab and Transaction Journal New Tag. These two are technically not additional features. These are actual bug fixes, okay? And this is one of the things that drives QuickBooks users nuts, which is, I'm going to give you the example. Let's say, for example, I'm looking at a particular invoice, okay? And actually, I'm going to X out for a second. So the screen I was in is bank feed. So I just want to give you some context, okay? So I'm going to close all the tabs here, okay? So I happen to be on the banking screen, and I go create an invoice, okay? Or I opened up the invoice screen. Then I go back and look at a particular invoice, and I want to see an audit log. So I just click on more and then click on audit history. So the audit history will close the invoice that I'm in. And then if I click on back, okay, it opens up the invoice in this case. So that's good. Let's just see one more time. Let's go into audit history and let's go to back.
But then
And
once you press X,
that's it. That's it. So then when you close the invoice, it gets back to the audit history, and then you click back, it opens up the invoice, and it just drives people crazy. This is what people call the loop, the audit log loop, or something like that. So when we went in there, and when we turn on that feature, and it works with transaction journals too, and you are, again, we're going to do the exact same scenario. So we're sitting here looking at the invoice, and then we go into the audit history. And instead of opening it within the same screen, it opens it in a new tab. And the purpose for that is if I X out of that, and then back into invoice, and I X, I will go back to whatever screen I was prior to the invoice, and not, not looping me back into the audit log. Okay, so let's go back into the settings here, and we've covered that.
there's
On
actually one more setting on this spot that's probably worth mentioning, which is reports enhanced drill down.
Okay, yep. So I'm going to turn on reports enhanced drill down and go into the profit and loss and show you what essentially we've done here. So a couple of things. You're looking at a profit and loss, you're looking at a balance sheet, you're looking at any summary style report in QuickBooks Online. Again, the classic version. If I right click on any of the numbers without RightTool being installed, you actually do not get an open a new link or open a new tab option. It's just something screwy with the way the screen and the HTML is set up. You don't get to right click and have the option to open in a new window or in a new tab. With the enhanced reporting experience, you do. We fix something on the URL to fix that. The other thing that happens is if you were to click on any drill down, it opens the drill down in a separate tab. The reason for that is because if I don't open in a second tab and I open within the same tab, when I click back and get back to the profit and loss, it's going to scroll me all the way back in the top, and you lose the place in line if you were analyzing any particular account. So you were like just scanning through the P&L or balance sheet or whatever and clicking on the account. So it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to like find your place in the line again. Now, something worth mentioning is, even if that happens, we added a second layer of contingency, which is a little red button here that says jump to last. If I click on jump to last, it will scroll me down on the last thing that I click. So we actually protect you in both sides, right? One, we open a new tab to avoid that. And secondly, if it does happen for whatever reason, you click on jump to last and it'll take you back to where you're supposed to be. But the nice thing about opening the reports on a new tab is that if you drill even further, so let's say I click on one of these transactions,
which this is in the new reports, by the way.
Right. And part of the challenge here is that that QuickBooks sometimes is defaulting to the custom reports, but I mean to the new enhanced reports. But what it doesn't, for whatever reason, some people have it, some people don't. When it doesn't open in a enhanced reports, and you come in here, this second layer of reports, this drill down, when you click on it, it will open in a new tab. Now, it might not do it because I had to switch back to classic mode, but just to simulate this, I can right click and open in a new tab. So essentially, that's what the enhanced, when you're in all classic reports 100%, what it does is you start from the P&L, then you go to a drill down, and then you go to the transaction. And then once you X out of the transaction, it'll close that tab automatically for you because it knows that additional tab wasn't something that you needed. You were just basically drilling down on a particular transaction. This whole thing, especially if you're a QuickBooks desktop user, mimics a little bit of the feel of working in a desktop platform, where every time you click on something, it opens a new and separate window. We are doing our best to try to kind of throw back to the old school QuickBooks desktop users that felt they were more productive because they had not everything was confined to a single screen, and you were not losing your place in line or whatever you were doing on that screen. So that's what Reports Enhanced Drill Down is. Now, in the QBO user experience, as you noticed at the very beginning when we turned on RightTool, the auto close left navigation bar, that's on by default. We also have a setting for auto close banking pop-up. So when you go into banking or when you go to the chart of accounts, a lot of pop-ups show up telling you warning this, warning that, or maybe, oh, hey, enjoy this new experience or whatever. We do our best to just like get rid of all those pop-ups, or at least auto close them for you. Here's the jump to location or jump to last button. That's actually present in multiple places, not just the reports, but also in the chart of accounts, customer vendor, reconcile page, products, receipts, anywhere that you tend to scroll down and click on something to open a new screen, we add that jump to last or jump to last location button to give you that. We also added this thing called extended print options. That's worth mentioning. When I open up a journal entry, for example, one of the things that people get frustrated about sometimes for whatever reason, and I'm not saying like you should always be printing journal entries, you can't print a journal entry. There's no print button anywhere for you to print it. And if you hit Control P on the keyboard, you get this like really quirky HTML type print. It doesn't work really well. Sometimes you can right click and do print. In this case, not even letting me do that. Or there you go, right click and print, and it'll take you again back into the screen. And you have to do really funky stuff to get maybe potentially some sort of printable thing. So what we've done is we basically added this button that says RightTool Print, just so you know that it's RightTool, not default. When you click on RightTool Print, we generate a PDF for you, and you can print it or save it as a PDF. So this is basically a report that we built so you can print journal entries. So in a nutshell, we fixed the fact that journal entries are not you cannot print them. Now you can do it in portrait, you can do it in landscape mode. You can also print bills. So if I go and create a new bill here, I'm going to go to bill, and I'll actually recall another bill that I've created. Okay, you should see a RightTool print button, and you can print a bill as well. So essentially, we created a mock of a journal entry print and a mock of a bill print for you, because those are two things that you cannot print by default in QuickBooks Online. In QBO user experience, other things worth noticing is I can export a journal entry now in a CSV, so not just a PDF, a printable format. We can even split out the account numbers from the chart of accounts. One of the most popular things that RightTool has is this register, reconcile useful links. I'm going to go into bank feeds and kind of show you. So if I'm working on a particular account in bank feed, so let's say I'm working on this account 4660, there is a link that takes me to go to bank register. This is awesome. This is actually well designed by QuickBooks Online. You're looking at the bank feeds and you have a direct link to the bank register. When you get to the bank register, QuickBooks doesn't give you an actual link to go into the banking feeds version of it. So we've added this in red. It says back to banking. So if you click on back to banking, so basically you have the ability to go back and forth from banking to the register. Now I can go to reconcile from the register screen. So if I click on reconcile, QuickBooks doesn't give me a way to get back to, let me just put here, to get back into the register. So we've added a button here that says to get back into the bank feeds. So we added a button here to get back into banking. So you can go into banking or reconcile history straight from here. You can go to the register. That's default in QuickBooks. That's why it's blue. But then you can go into banking from here. So essentially between bank feeds, register, and reconcile, you can all go within, you can link within each other. What we don't have, it's kind of curious, we haven't noticed this, we don't have a go to reconcile from the register screen. And that's something that we probably can add fairly quickly. Not sure how we missed that one, but we should probably be able to figure out how to go straight into a reconcile from here. So like also the idea is that these three areas, bank feeds, reconcile, and register, are the most commonly used, especially when you're doing a cleanup or adding a lot of information, reconciling it, downloading from bank feeds. So we have to get pretty quickly. There is a reconcile button up here in the top. So I guess that's why we didn't add it. Okay, so I'll correct myself. We didn't add it because the reconcile button is up there. So we don't need to add it through RightTool. QuickBooks does give us that by default. There's a couple other things here. I think the one worth mentioning, actually, they're all worth mentioning, but one of the most popular ones is the auto print reconciliation reports. Is actually off by default. I'm going to turn that on. And essentially, when you go and reconcile a bank account. So let's say I'm going to reconcile this one. Okay. And I'm going to just force a reconciliation for now. When you go reconcile, you have to click in two different places to print the reconciliation report. And some people like me like to print them and staple them next to the printed statement and archive them or whatever. So it automatically opens the reconciliation report for you and it opens the print screen for you. So at this point, you can decide to save it as a PDF for your records or actually print it, or you can hit escape and get out of it if you want to. But again, this is a setting that you can turn on if you want to automatically go into this reconciliation reports and hit print for you. Okay, I am going to skip the rest of them so I can move forward. So I'm going to go into classic reports, one of the favorite set of features inside QuickBooks Online. I'm actually going to, inside QuickBooks Online, RightTool for QuickBooks Online, I'm going to actually turn these off. And I'm going to start with my favorite, and essentially what was one of the first 5 or 6 features we added to RightTool, which is the ability to hide sub rows and sub columns. So I'm just going to focus on these two for now. So I'm going to hit save and fresh QBO, save and refresh all tabs, and then go into a profit and loss report. And I'm going to do, let's say, this fiscal year and hit run report. So when you are expanded, if you have a lot of sub accounts, some of the frustrating things that QuickBooks Online has is that if you want to collapse some of them, you can't unless you click on each one of them manually. So it's kind of a pain in the butt to go through and collapse each one that you want. There is a universal collapse button up here, which is awesome. So if I hit collapse, it collapses everything. But the problem with that collapse is that it doesn't give me the ability to manually expand any specific account that I want. So you really don't get a full customizability. You either get expand all, collapse all type of thing. So I'm going to expand it again. And you're going to notice a button up here that says sub rows. Okay. That sub rows, that means collapse sub rows. And if I click on it once, it will actually do one layer of collapse. If I click on it twice, it will do the full collapse, like basically collapse to the account type level. And if I click one more time, it expands it just expands everything for me. And then I click one more time, I get one layer of collapse, and 2, I get the full collapse. So basically you get 3 toggles: expand all, collapse to the parent account, and then collapse to the account type, which is cool because you just go really narrow and then maybe just expand a particular group of accounts that you want to expand, and you get the total customizability. Now, if I actually, instead of working on rows, I want to work on columns, I can select the P&L report by classes, for example. This is a classic one that we get. And then sometimes we have classes and subclasses, which makes these reports really difficult to read. So we added, every time you have columns in a summary report, we've added 3 options here. One is called subcolumns, basically to collapse subcolumns. The other one is to hide the parent columns. And the other one is to hide any columns that have net 0. So for example, if I click on subcolumns, what's going to happen is these classes called parent class 1, 2, 3, and 4, they had subclasses under it. So what we've done essentially is taken the total column, renamed it to the parent column, and we made it red to let you know that this is a RightTool feature. And it's particularly important to know the RightTool features because we cannot modify what these reports look like when they get printed or saved as a PDF. So the only thing that this is useful for, it's for viewing purposes. So we can't change the underlying print drivers that QuickBooks has. You can, however, export it to Excel from here, or export it to CSV actually.
Might not have
But
that turned on.
I don't have it turned on. So, but let me go to the settings and go to where
Top one.
okay, export to CSV. I'm also going to tell it to exclude the report headers and split out the account, so you can kind of see the sub settings that we have in that category. So I'm going to go back to the P&L by class. It's going to reset. I'm going to click on sub columns one more time, and I'm also going to hide the net zeros. Then I'm going to go into, scroll to the right, click on this gear menu. Actually, not that gear menu, the export menu. And then we added this thing called export to CSV and also export to clipboard. You can actually copy and paste this into Excel or Google Sheets. But if I go to export to CSV, it creates a CSV that, like, QuickBooks doesn't have this ability by default. It creates a CSV and it does a couple of really useful things that we all wished QuickBooks Online did. Well, one, we split out the account from, we split out the account number from the account name. We still keep the hierarchy with indentations. We don't do the flat accounts yet, because that's just very complex to get that done, but it shouldn't be impossible. At some point, we'll figure that out. But at least we have the visual hierarchy of the reports here, of the accounts, and we have the account number split out. And then notice that these parent classes here, these were actually they have subclasses and they've been collapsed. Again, it's CSV. You still have to work all the formats, but if you want to export, you need to export the numbers to do any sort of calculations or graphs or whatever. You can do that. That's the best we can do, after that. But for now, these subcolumns is mostly a visual thing. And then if you click on parent columns, what it does is it leaves all the subclasses, but it hides the parent and the total. So basically, if you don't want to see the parent column and the total column or the subtotal column, and you only want to see basically all your subclasses across the board, you can see them here, which if you were to export this into CSV and actually add them all together, it would actually sum the total at the end, which is one of the frustrating things when you see subtotals or the parent headers in there. So that's the gamut of hide sub rows and sub columns. Mark, you want to add anything? Did I forget anything in this category?
No, I think that's pretty good. That's pretty spot on.
Okay, so we have default print reports in landscape. Some people always print them in landscape, so I don't have to show that. That would be there. We have auto switch to classic view. So any point in time, and this is a very interesting one, at any point in time that there is that QuickBooks is actually forcing you to see the enhanced reports version of a report, and it gives you a little button in the top that says switch to classic. So I'm going to click on one of these drill downs, and anytime that that happens, it'll automatically switch you for you. I don't know if you noticed it, but it kind of did that for you. So when it defaults into the modern view, and notice that because of the auto switch, basically it doesn't allow you even to see the enhanced view. So we try as much as possible essentially to get rid of the enhanced view for you by clicking on the auto switch to classic view. So if you kind of see, you're trying to see the enhanced view and it's not working, it's because we blocked it for you. And there's all sorts of blocking mechanisms that we created in RightTool, because sometimes, we want that essentially.
And to be clear, this, as with all blocking mechanisms, is turned off by default. So you do need to turn this one on if you want to have auto switch to classic view.
Correct. It's pretty destructive unto itself. Now I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn on this one called All Dates option on Enhanced Reports. Sometimes we actually want to use the enhanced version of reports for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not going to judge you for it. Okay. So let's say, for example, I'm looking at any enhanced report. Okay. And I don't have it to switch to automatically. And one of the frustrating things that people have is,
we got a new update. Look at that.
So you know what? Thank you, QuickBooks. Thank you. Thank you. Mark the date, December 14th, 2023. QuickBooks actually listened to us. So this thing here called all dates, options, and enhanced reports is no longer necessary. We don't need to talk about it. We're going to kill it off RightTool. Finally, QuickBooks actually added something into QuickBooks, copied or inspired from us or from the multiple complaining from the community in the Facebook groups. So essentially what they did is they added all dates finally into the enhanced reports. No need to talk about that anymore. So we're actually very excited about that. And very soon we will get rid of that all dates option in enhanced reports. Thank you, Inta, by the way, for making us work really hard and add something that you should have added there in the first place. Okay, now let's talk about reports preset. This is probably one of the most powerful ones. So let's say I run a profit and loss. I'm going to go back here for a second, go back into report list, and let's say I run a profit and loss. And every time I run a profit and loss, there's multiple things that I'm always doing. Let's say I always come in here and do this by class. And then I always come in here and click on non-zero and non-zero. And I always come in here and do, let's say, percentage of income. And I always come in here and switch this to cash because the default is accrual. And I always collapse this, and I always sort by descending. So let's say this is kind of a ritual where every time I run a P&L, I'm doing like 17 different clicks to get the report to show the way I like to see the report. So what we've done is when you go back into the settings here and you see a preset button here, you can choose all the settings. So I want the negatives to be red. I want to hide the non-zero columns. I want to sort by descending. I want to display the columns by classes. I want and maybe to force itself to cash basis if it's accrual by default. I want the report, and this is an interesting one. I want to do a rolling 12 months. So this is something that QuickBooks doesn't have by default. I want to have an internal, I want to have a printable footnote that says on audited management use only or something like that. It's inconceivable that QuickBooks at this point still doesn't have a default, like a default messaging we can add to all the reports by default. I want to collapse this, and I want the let's just do that. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, you could argue this a lot more than 7 clicks. 8. So we're going to save about 8 clicks by turning this feature on, because when we go back into a report screen and we click on profit and loss, essentially there's now a little shortcut here that says run presets. And when you click on run presets, every single thing that you turn off and on, or that you turn on in the presets, I click on run presets, and it's basically like a macro. Like it basically clicks on everything that it needs to click, and it shows you the report that you always look at in the exact same way and setting. And this only works in the classic reports. Okay, not in the enhanced reports. The enhanced reports do not give you the ability to manipulate the URL up here. Now, I suspect that in the future, once enhanced reports are pretty much to cover the entire universe of QuickBooks Online, we'll figure out how to macro certain things on the reports, but we're not even going to attempt to develop anything for the enhanced reports, because case in point, we developed all dates and they already fixed it. Basically, QuickBooks is still sort of beta testing and developing the enhanced or the modernized reports. Bank rules is the last, or bank/rules is the last set of features in here. I'm actually going to turn them all on, and I am going to attempt all on except for improve rule creation workflow, and attempt to explain every single thing that's happening in the last kind of like 8 minutes we have here on the webinar. So I'm going to turn on everything when it comes to bank feeds. I'm going to turn everything on. So the bank feed screen is going to look very different. There's going to be tons of red all over it. It's going to look like a massacre. Okay. And as you may have noticed, anything in red is stuff that we added in QuickBooks. So for example, we are in this particular bank account. First thing you see is a big button that says expenses or expense. If I click on that button, it opens a new tab and it opens the expense screen. Okay. If I, let me switch, I'm going to switch to like this account here. If I click on the drop down menu and click on sales receipt, then it opens up a new sales receipt for you. If I click on deposit, it opens up a new deposit for you. And basically it's so you don't have to go into the new button or go into the new button in the left or in the top or in the right. And the other thing that we added, which in this particular version, it looks like is not showing up the account ID here in the top. So you can check on that, Mark, to see why
Yeah.
that little functionality is not there. But the one thing that we had added to this is we default the account number in the internal database. So when you do open the deposit, the check, the journal, the sales receipt, whatever it is, it actually opens it on the, you know, using that account as a default. Okay, I can't showcase it here, but that's the way it's supposed to work. So when you, by the time you download and work with RightTool, you should see that part of the functionality. When you open the new transaction, it defaults on that transaction. Now, couple other things that we're going to see in here. Notice that there are 2 lines on every description. And the reason, because there's 2 lines, is because I have in the little gear menu, I don't have show bank details turned on. And when we don't have show bank details turned on, QuickBooks gives you essentially their own version or estimation or guesstimation of what the vendor should be. Sometimes is right, like this Ticketmaster is right, even though the bank feeds actually didn't say Ticketmaster, it had actually the name of the artist. It knows that TM means Ticketmaster, so it translated Ticketmaster for you. But the problem is, sometimes I want to see both pieces of information and I want to see them summarized in this screen. I don't want to have to click on it to then see the description. So notice that we added in red that second layer, so you get to see both things: what QuickBooks thinks it is, and what the actual information that came from the bank is. So that's kind of the first one you see. Now, let's say, for example, the next thing we do is we select a particular vendor. Like we think that we're looking at this transaction, and we think that this is this vendor here. We also added a little button called Payee History. And QuickBooks has something similar built in, has this thing called categorization history. When you click on that, it opens up this right-hand bar. Now, with RightTool, we actually made this bar much bigger. This used to be about 20% of the screen. Now it's about 40% of the screen, so we made it double in size. So a nice little add-on. But one of the challenges we have here is that you only get 12 months. You don't get anything beyond 12 months. This screen is actually great. If it did anything beyond 12 months, we actually wouldn't need to do this. But what Pay History does, and when I click on that, it opens up a new tab. And in the new tab, it shows me a report of every single instance where we used that specific vendor or payee. And then you can see historically how we have potentially categorized these transactions in the past. So by knowing exactly how this payee was used in the past, and essentially the way we did it is by pre-adding the vendor name in the filter for you in a new report. By looking at the history with all dates, maybe it helps you determine which how to categorize that particular one. So that's that payee history. But the real big one, the real valuable one here, and let me open up a vendor where maybe this could be a little bit more useful. Let me go back here. I'll do this one. Okay. So let's say we have this thing here called Coral Gables Pay by Phone. Most people know what that is, but let's say you don't know what this is. You can click on Google Memo, and Google Memo will take the text that's inside of that memo, and it'll open up a pop-up here on the right-hand side with a Google search, and it's a simplified search window, so it doesn't like take your entire screen again, and then it basically does a Google search for you, so you can inquire what that transaction might be. But the real innovative part about this, and let me scroll down and look at one more, is if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to omit this COH, okay? Or I wanted to maybe only use COH PRKING as the amount that I want to search, I can select the text, then click Google Memo, and then it only searches that specific text. Okay, so that's the real innovative part about this. It's that we do that, that we give you the ability of flexibility to do that. The other things that we added in this screen, you might not notice it, but this account is actually double the size. So usually it's like half the size. So you get to see a little bit more visibility. This is useful for when you have a lot of accounts or sub accounts. So when this account is half the size, you don't get to see what the entire path of this is. So this setting allows you to see the entire path. And the other thing is the memo, instead of being a single line like this, we made it a little bit thicker because some people, what they like to do is they like to add notes. Whoops. They like to add notes, notes 1, 2, 3, and they want to add the notes as a separate line, basically separating what's the original text that came from the bank versus the additional text that you're adding. So that's something that's, again, depending on your preference, you can add more text. And again, it just makes the memo box. All memo boxes should be big and should be like, because everybody uses memo differently. Last thing I'll show here is transfers. So I turned on a feature, and I'll go back and click setting one more time. I turn on a feature called restrict transfers and bank feeds. Now, if you have been using QuickBooks for a while, especially QuickBooks Online, you hate transfers. Transfers are the bane of our existence. It makes us waste so much time. We avoid transfers at all costs. I don't know if you noticed this, but the word transfer or the link for transfer in these two transactions is not available. So we do not give you the ability to create a transfer from the screen. You can still go to new and do transfers, but almost no one does that. The vast majority of transfers come from somebody just accepting things in bank feeds. So I cannot accept it. I cannot accept the transfer. And the second layer to this is, notice that if I click on the transaction, which should be a transfer, it automatically switches to categorize. Okay, so look, if I click on this, automatically switches to categorize. So we macro moving away from transfer to categorize, again, forcing the user not to use transfers. And this is one of those things that if you know, it's hard to explain until you've gone through the experience of, like, cursing at transfers for existing. You really don't know and understand the context as to like why the transfers, avoiding transfers is so powerful. And you can also do that with credit card payments, or with credit card payments. And I think, yeah, one more, and the last one, and we'll be done. So up here in the top, okay, where all the accounts are shown, one of the challenges that we have when the account names are really long is like, for example, in this case, this credit card actually has a sub account. The sub account is 888 Mike. Okay. The problem is I can't visually see the sub account. So what we've done is very clever, and this somebody from my office actually suggested this, is anytime you have anything in parentheses in a bank account or a credit card account in bank feeds, it relegates that information here to the bottom. So if you want to label your banks and credit cards with specific context, like you want to label it payroll, you want to label it travel, you want to label it Mike's card, you want to label it expenses or office or whatever, you just put that in parentheses as part of the name on the chart of accounts. And essentially, regardless of what the account really is called, 9911 or whatever, you get that little preview there. And when we are categorizing things, that label could be contextual. And bookkeepers absolutely love this feature. So it's been an hour. I wanted to keep this exactly at an hour. Mark, so two things. One, we do have some live attendees in Zoom. Any questions you want to ask, and as a matter of fact, I could even bring you on. If you want to, I can bring you on in voice, and I can answer any questions or show you. Mark, you want to cover any of the bases there? I'm also going to stop streaming in YouTube. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching this video. And the webinar is still on. So if we have any questions, if you have any questions right now, we'll answer them. If not, we can end the webinar. So we'll be monitoring that. Mark, was there anything that you think important that I missed?
Yeah, no, I think you got everything I was hoping you'd get. I was gonna make sure you got the the text under the bank cards, so it's good that you got that at the end there.
Yeah, good catch. And we do have 7 people live on the webinar still. So if you don't have a question, I'll take advantage and I'll show you some of the pro features. So I'm gonna go into the RightTool website for a second. Can I show you the information that's there now? In the RightTool website, if you click on Pro Edition, we basically, we tell you it's $50 a month for the first user and $15 for additional users. Again, in 2024, that pricing might change, and we're going to add more features to the Firm Edition and basically give you a list of all the features that the Pro has. Another thing you can do is you can click on Free versus Pro, and you can see with links all the features that QuickBooks has, and every link shows you a YouTube video that explains to you how particular feature works. So if I click on Quick Create Payee or something like that, I get to see a video of how that works, and I can see how that works in real life. And like I said, we have over 100 features in total between the Pro and the free. And if you click on Settings Help, there's actually a screenshot of every screen in the settings. And if you go to any of them, you kind of get from the website, you get to see what's there, an explanation of all the features. So if you happen to be like explaining RightTool to someone or trying to like show them something without it being installed or physically have to show it, through the website, you can see all those things. And we even have a really nifty spreadsheet on the website that has the comparison of all the Pro and free features. So I'm going to go into the settings. I'm going to click in Help, and I'm going to click on Turn off all toggles. So I'm just basically turning off everything that's available in RightTool. And I'm going to click on Login here, and I'm going to log into my Pro account. Okay, so it's one of the cool things about the Pro account is you can have a user ID and password with RightTool, or you can use your Intuit ID if you signed up originally by using your Intuit ID. So every time you're logged in, it will log you in automatically into the Pro version. So once you're logged in, and this screen only really shows how much you're paying per month and the ability to add more firm users and the ability to cancel your paid subscription from here or look at your payment history, your invoices. That's what you do that. But basically, once you log in once, and you have to log in at least once a month, once you go back into RightTool and refresh, now it's going to say that it's on the Pro edition. And in the top right, it shows you the email address of the Pro user. So there's a whole bunch of Pro features to showcase. I'm going to showcase the most popular. I'm going to start with copy Excel to journal, probably by far the most popular. The second one is batch delete in the register. And the third one, batch edit in the register. Mark, I will let you choose the fourth one. We'll only showcase 4. So which would be the fourth one?
Okay, so we have the copy, we have batch edit. Oh man, this is gonna be copy down is probably its own separate thing that people like.
We'll do copy down. So I'm gonna turn on 4 features out of 4 Pro features out of the 50 features. And the Pro features, some of them are like really bulky like this from the perspective of all the things that you can do. So I'm gonna save and close that. And I'm gonna start with a journal entry. So let's start with a trusty journal entry. Okay, so let's imagine, and I'm gonna pull up a journal entry that has a bunch of lines. Let's imagine that we actually want to import a journal entry like this, but this journal entry, it's in Excel, right? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna export this journal entry to Excel. Actually, let me turn on that feature. And the nice thing is the Excel export is actually a free feature. So if you want to export a journal entry to Excel, that's going to be free. So I'm going to click on Export to CSV just to kind of illustrate the point. And the reasons to how or why people would have a journal entry in Excel, they're very unique. Everybody has their own facts or circumstances that drove them to have a journal entry in Excel rather than some other fashion. And so assuming that my journal entry is in Excel, I want to get all this information into, assuming, let's say 300%, I want to get all this information into QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to go here, save a new, and assuming I have a brand new, fresh journal entry, if I were to try to copy this information, copy, and go into QuickBooks and right-click and paste, it doesn't work. Okay, that's the inspiration behind this feature is you can't paste. Okay, so in order to paste, quote unquote paste, what we've done is we basically run a little program that simulates you pasting or typing the information in the screen. So we're going to click on the button that says Paste from Excel, and we're going to get a new pop-up screen after QuickBooks opens every drop-down menu. A RightTool opens every drop-down menu to inspect what's there first, and this is just kind of like to verify that this is accurate. Then we're going to right-click and paste into the little empty box that says Paste or Drop CSV. You can also drop a CSV file. So if you happen to have this file in CSV, and I'll show you, I'll save this in Save As, and let's say I save it as a CSV. I'll put it on the desktop. And essentially, instead of pasting, and it's hard to appreciate in a webinar, I click, drag and drop. It's really not that evident that you, but I basically coming in here, try this again, coming in here and dropping the file. Hopefully you can see the little icon there. So dropping the file is the same thing as pasting. So you can either paste or drag and drop your CSV. And then it does a preview for you. Green, it tells you, okay, the information in the spreadsheet actually matches verbatim what's in QuickBooks Online. That means it will quote paste correctly. If something doesn't paste correctly because it doesn't jive, it's gonna show up in red. And essentially, if it's in red, nothing's gonna happen. Okay, like it's just gonna bring a blank in there. If I have just the account number, it recognizes it as long as there's like a little space after it. And if there's two potential accounts that could have the same or that are related to that part that you pasted, you can actually by clicking on the little on the box up here when it's yellow, you can select which is the actual right account. You can either use the account name by itself, you can use the account number by itself, or you can use both the account number and the account name combined. So I'm going to click on Paste into QuickBooks, and essentially it did what you're expecting it to do. It simulated you typing the information in there. And at that point, of course, you can, with the 10 minutes that you saved or whatever, you can go for a walk. Okay. Now, the other cool things about this is, let's say I forgot to put a specific piece of information, like the class. I don't have to go back and copy and paste again if it's all the same piece of information. So let's say this is supposed to be parent class 2 commercial. I put it once, and then I click on the copy down button, which is this down arrow pointing down. Click on copy down, and then I click on top of the field that I want to replicate, and then click OK. And I'll actually go in and pre-fill all the things for me. Now, in some cases, maybe I only want to pre-fill 2 or 3 or 4, or 2 or 3, you probably wouldn't use a paste feature, but a copy down feature. But let's say I only want to do the first 3 of one particular class. So I'll pick my class here. I click on copy down, click in here, and then put 3 on the pop-up, and then click OK. And I'll only copy it 3 times. And then I can come into the next one, select the next one, and then copy down. And if I don't put anything in there and leave a 0, it will just fill everything for me. This works inside description too. So I can put here adjusting 2022 to match report 1, 2, 3 or whatever. And then I don't have to come in here, click and copy and paste and all that crazy stuff. I click on copy down, select the field, OK, and boom. Same thing with the customer, select the customer, copy down, boom. Okay. Let's say same thing with the dollar amount, same thing. Actually, just with that, it doesn't do it with accounts. Does it do it with accounts? I don't think it does it with accounts.
Yeah, no, you can do it with accounts.
Yeah.
You can do it with anything.
It does it with accounts too. So
you can
copy
technically
down.
do it with debits and credits. It's just that I don't know why you would want to.
Correct. So if I want to change this to, let's say, 300, and then I can go to copy down on that 300, and then I can come in here and do 300 as well. Copy down. Yeah. It's very up. Okay. I had to limit it to 2 in this case, but yeah. Let's do 300 here on this side, and then we'll copy this down. Okay, and fix that. Okay, so tons of flexibility with the copy down feature. So it did take 10 minutes to show that, because that copy down in the paste is really awesome. And I think I forgot to show something really valuable. So I'm gonna go back to let's say go back to a journal entry for a second. And another thing that's valuable from journal entries is replicating a particular line. So let's say this last line I want to duplicate or replicate. there's a little red button there. It has a copy icon. If I click on that, it replicates it, and I can click it multiple times, and I can basically duplicate the entire line with the contents that's there already. Super useful. And this copy down feature works in invoices, and it works in bills and checks as well. Okay. And Mark makes a face because it doesn't work as stable as in the journal entry, but it does
No,
work.
they're working fine. I'm just trying to think of the new versions. I'm pretty sure they work in the new versions as well.
They work in checks, bills, invoices. They should work in all those. Let's go to the register and showcase the last piece of Pro features. And again, the Pro features are the ones that you need the paid version of a RightTool. Let's start with one of people's favorites. We click on batch, and I just want to delete a bunch of crap that's in here. So I select a couple of transactions that I want to get rid of. Okay. And then I click up here where it says delete, click OK, OK, and then just let the script do its thing. So very, very useful feature. The other one, which is actually much bigger, much more complex, is the ability to batch edit a transaction that's in the register. So for example, let's say all of these are supposed to be a different vendor, okay? And there's no tools in QuickBooks to do that. So I click on batch, select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go to edit, and then I'm going to tell it what I want to change. So let's say I want to change, in this case, the payee. So I click on close. Now we get this little pink or reddish box and highlights the one that you can edit. Put whatever the right vendor here is, go to confirm batch, click OK, and then let it cycle through and change all those things for you. The other really interesting things you can do is I can click on batch, select multiple transactions. I can hold shift and select multiple, click on edit, and instead of changing the payee, I can change the reconcile status. Now, this is a very tricky one, and you kind of have to know what you're doing for this to make sense. But if I do that, I can actually manually clear these, manually reconcile them. Not a good idea. Don't ever do that. Or manually unreconcile them. Again, this is only for people that know why they would be doing this. If you don't know why you would do that, don't ever do it, period. Okay. Then I click on confirm batch and click OK. And essentially, I just unreconciled these transactions. Sometimes, for whatever reason, transactions come reconciled from QuickBooks Desktop or from some transfer feature. So you can do that. And the last thing here is I'm going to edit these in batch. And let's say I'm going to change the account, but I also want to append to a memo a note regarding something that I changed in batch. So I'm going to append to the memo and click here, and I'll let me select the multiple transactions here, and then I will let's say reclassify this to health insurance, and then I'm going to add here, I'm going to call it I'm going to do space line space and put reclass by Hector on 12/14/23 because client told me to. Okay. And then I click on confirm batch, and essentially all the transactions are going to be reclassified. But also, if I open up the transaction, notice that in the memo screen in the bottom, it added that for me. Now, sometimes I like to add not just a word like reclass, maybe hashtag something. So let's say I go to batch and select a bunch of things that I want to reclass here, and go to edit, and I'm going to go to close, reclassify this, let's say, to general insurance, and then I'm going to do hashtag reclass, and then add whatever notes about X or Y or Z. Okay. And what's cool about this hashtagging something instead of just using natural language is if you're doing a lot of reclassifying, renaming, changing the payee or whatever, you could always go into your search box in the advanced search, and you can search inside of a memo. So let's do memo, and you can search something with a hashtag so it doesn't get confused with any other natural words that you use in there. Click on search, and it will find all the transactions that you reclassed with this tool, or you appended a memo with that tool. Okay. Mark, anything else? Or there's a pending question here.
Yeah. Joel says, I primarily use copy paste for invoices. Do you know there's a way to prevent having lines auto clear when you update the item or service? I was happy
Yeah,
when Joel gave this question. This is a
yeah.
me
So
feature.
yeah, so this is actually a feature that Mark came up with prior to RightTool even existing. And inside QBO user experience, it should say lock. Let me search it because I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Lock. Okay. So inside error prevention, inside error prevention, there is a transaction item lock. I'm gonna click save and refresh. And then let's say I am doing an invoice. Say I'm doing an invoice. And I'm going to correct an invoice. So I'll go back to an invoice that already exists. And let's say I need to swap the item that is here. So one of the challenges that we have is when we swap an item on an existing invoice and I swap the item, it changes the description for me and it's extremely frustrating. Okay. So I'm going to revert this. And essentially, before you swap an item, you click on this little icon with a little lock it in. Basically, you're saying, hey, anything I change here, anytime I change the drop down item name, do not change the dollar amount or the rate or the quantity or the class or the description. So I can just simply just swap the item and I keep all the original information. Essentially, what's happening is QuickBooks is changing it, and then we basically saved it and pasted it back in there. So we made the correction for you in your behalf. So Joel, thank you for asking a question for an answer that we did have. We love that. Okay. Okay, we don't have any more questions, so we can end it. Do you think we can end the webinar now?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is that, again, if you want to edit the description afterwards, because we do, like I said, we do just basically paste everything back in. If you want to change the description afterwards, you just have to unlock because it will not let you change if you don't.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, just something to keep in mind there.
Yes, I didn't even notice that. Okay, perfect. So thank you everybody for attending this webinar. If I don't see you again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.